Good day, everyone. This is Elaine, your detox coach from A Northern Infinite Wellness. Today we've got a long video planned out to talk about our last detox group of this year of 2023 and all their medical concerns and conditions that they listed. So we're going to touch on menopause and Parkinson's, on the COVID jab. That has been quite a big topic in this group, as well as anxiety, depression, hemorrhoids. Those are the main, the big ones we're going to just refer to, and then we're going to run through all the other conditions. So like every time we have this group of people detoxing together, they complete a form with all their information on it, and I categorize this according to the cause underlying the conditions. So first and foremost, always remember that the main thing that makes us ill, the main thing that all our diseases are rooted in, is a congested lymphatic fluid. This is the fluid that's in between our cells. We get blood and we get lymph. Blood is about 20% of the fluid, lymph is about 80% of the fluid. So this lymph is our sewage system. It picks up the waste of 100 trillion cells. Our cells can't go to the toilet and do their thing, they eat and they do their thing in the lymphatic fluid. So if this lymphatic fluid becomes stagnant and is not able to leave the body successfully, they basically are, the cells are surrounded by their own wastes. And this is what brings damage to our cells and then eventually damage to the tissue. So you can't tell me that a certain part of your body is congested. It is one river. So if you're congested in a certain part of your body, it means you are congested in the rest of your body too. And it's in between the cells. I'm not speaking in between the organs or something like that. We're actually speaking of in between the cells. So we have to think of cellular level. And the cells, like we live in air, the cells live in this lymphatic fluid and the blood that surrounds all the cells. So this is where the roots of our diseases are at, is in the lymphatic fluid. So even though I have three others actually, thyroid and adrenals and headspace neurologically, the root of the thyroid being hypo or hyper, or the adrenals being hypo or hyper, is this lymphatic fluid again. So I don't want to take it away from the fact that the main reason for all our disease is the lymphatic fluid. But sometimes when the adrenals are really weak, because of this lymphatic fluid, there's a repercussion of other conditions that starts kicking in. And the same with the thyroid and neurologically. So that is why those categories has been made. So let's start with, and of course the main purpose of this video is to speak about the method of healing it. So you all have been now, the group of the last group of 2023 has been on this detox until yesterday. Yesterday was day 28. I couldn't get to doing this recording earlier. It was just such a crazy month with our road trip and everything, the end of the year, and there were so many deadlines that had to be met. But here I am, we're talking about it a day later, and I'm really going to focus at the end of the video about speaking of integration of now that you have experienced this way of healing and you've seen how your body cope with this way of healing. What now? What is lying ahead of you? So let's start with lymphatic conditions. This is conditions that is directly related to the lymphatic being congested, like everything else really, but there's no secondary application like with the adrenals and the thyroid. Okay, so autoimmune is a big one that came up quite a few times. So autoimmune is a way that the medical practitioners have coined a condition where your body is breaking itself down with any obvious reason. So this is something that you really should just dismiss. It is ridiculous that it even exists. The reason it exists because there's no true understanding about how the body works. So your body would never just break itself down for no reason. There will always be a reason. May it be acidosis, may it be some imbalance that we're not aware of. We're going to speak about diabetes 1 and 2, which falls under the category of autoimmune. When we speak of autoimmune, you must realize that actually they're telling you we don't know. We are not sure, and we're probably going to give you cortisol to deal with any autoimmune autoimmune situation, which is something that the adrenals, that a healthy adrenal would have made abundance of to deal with it, right? So immediately it starts taking us back to the adrenals when we speak autoimmune. But there's quite a wide variety out there. So we're not going to go into the whole world of autoimmune. One thing you must just realize is that you've got a super intelligent body, and this body has got a super high immune system. Actually, the immune system doesn't really exist without the lymphatic. Some people even go as far as saying there is no such thing as immune. It really is the lymphatic system, right? So, but we do understand the immune system to be our response to whatever is going on in our body, if it's good or bad or whatever, So we've got this immune response that we all got used to speaking of. And when your autoimmune kicks in, there's a reason for it. The most important layers of our immune system is our aura, our skin, and our lymphatic fluid. Those are the three first layers of protection, which is our immune system. They've been trying to convince us that the aura doesn't exist, which eventually science came back and proved to us it does, because they picked up on this electromagnetic load that surrounds every object in this planet. And that is basically the aura, right? And the healthier the object is, the bigger and stronger the aura would be. And then we've got our skin, which we attack on so many levels. First, we walk around in air that is really not as clean as it should be. There's a lot of chemistry in the air that affects our skin. And then we put on a lot of things. We actually learn to pay money, big money, for a lot of chemistry that we actually put on our skin and think it's okay. So rule of thumb is you only put in your skin what you could have eaten, right? So always remember this. If you have products in your shelf that you won't eat, don't put it on your skin. Gift it away or burn it or throw it away. Get yourselves the oils, the aloes, the natural stuff that you could have eaten, and you won't die, and you now actually use it on your skin. So this is something very important. And then the third one is the lymphatic fluid, which again is not something that is taught in the medical world. You barely even get to the word lymphatic fluid. You've got lymphatic nodes and lymphatic system and a lot of other lymphatic terms that is being used. They even speak of lymphatic massages and draining and that kind of thing, but they never speak of the lymphatic fluid as a substance that makes up 80% of the fluid in your body. So this is our immune system. And when our immune system is responding and seemingly breaking down our body or making certain functions ineffective, it really is, it's not what they say it is. There would be an underlying condition or underlying situation that you need to get to the bottom of to sort it out. And at the end of the day, our body exists of cells. The whole body exists of cells. Some of them are really tiny, others are tiny, tiny, tiny. Others are a foot long, but it's still a cell. And each cell is an entity of its own that eats and poops and eats food, and it transmutes and builds itself and replenish itself, regenerates itself if it has the ability to do so. And then it has a waste product that needs to be removed from it to keep the cell happy. So let's look at fatigue. Fatigue is quite a big one. It touches on lymphatic, the adrenals, and the thyroid. It is not a very simplistic and linear way of explaining what the sources of fatigue are, but basically it boils down to that the dynamic energy of your cell is not there. The cells itself do not have energy. It needs to build up its own dynamic energy. We call it ATP, and this is stored in the mitochondria, and if this is depleted, there's no energy. So now what people do is they use stimulants like caffeine and sugar and meat, the neurotransmitters in meat, to actually stimulate the adrenals that produce certain chemistry that gives you short-term energy again, like dopamine and adrenaline. So now you've got more energy, but it's chemical energy. It's energy that you only got because you stimulated a gland. It's not energy that is settled in the cell, dynamic energy that each cell has. It's because you lack in dynamic energy that you reach out to the stimulants to provide more energy. So a lot of our fatigue builds down to malnutrition of certain minerals, trace minerals, major minerals. And the reason for this most of the time is not diet. It could be diet, of course. If you're living on coffee and toast, you're not getting in what you're supposed to be getting in. But if you live on a diet where most of us are, that we know our veggies are important, we still probably eat our meat and our dairy, but we know veggies is important, we know fruits are important. Some of us supplement with a lot of isolated supplements, which is not ideal. We don't actually prescribe to that at all, but this is where people are at the moment. So in between all of that, most of us get enough nutrients in from our diet. Now you need to ask yourself the second question, then why am I malnutritioned? So this is how it works, right? The body produces enzymes. The adrenals produce enzymes for the utilization of up to 52 minerals. This includes your iron, your copper, manganese, magnesium, name it, sodium, potassium. These guys they all need enzymes that is produced by the adrenals so that your cell can actually use this enzyme to pull in the mineral towards the cell. It's almost like giving the cell a mouth, so that the mineral that comes past the cell the cell can actually consume it and transform it into the cell's world, So this is the main reason why we are deficient. Then, because sometimes our inner environment becomes so congested and sticky and coagulated, it's all sticking together, that nutrition literally is not getting to the cells, or nutrition itself are being stuck together because it's an acidic environment on the inside. This is one of acid's characteristics, is to make things stick together, to break things down, being corrosive, to burn things. This is the characteristic of acids, So if you're sitting with an inner environment that's congested and very acidic, even the nutrients you eat that gets broken down into its separate molecules, the moment it goes into this acidic inner environment, it starts sticking together, and now the cells can't utilize them, because the cells can't utilize clumped nutrition. It needs the individual nutrition. So there's a few reasons why you will be malnutritioned, and it's not most of the time because of our diet. It really is because of how our body utilizes this nutrition, or are able or not able to utilize it. The thyroid plays a huge role with fatigue as well, because it regulates your temperature. Certain enzyme functions simply won't happen if you're too cold or too hot. And there's repercussions for that then as well, So again, you need to look at your total environment, your holistic environment, to determine if you've got the holistic environment to actually have enzyme function taking place, to utilize the nutrition you need to have energy again, to build your dynamic energy. And remember, it's not as easy as to put food in your mouth and know it's going to get to your cell. We like a food processor for 100 trillion cells, and the food processing has 4 processes in it. The first one is digestion. So your digestion needs to be healthy. You need to have enough healthy saliva glands in your mouth that produce enough enzymes to break down plant material, simple structured food. Or you need to have a very strong stomach and small intestines to produce the hydrochloric acid you need if you eat complex structured food like proteins that needs to be broken down. Those 2 things need to work. And then you have to have strong liver and pancreas to produce the bicarb and the bile you need to alkalize this acidic chyme that has been created by the hydrochloric acid to even get to the point of digestion. So if you've got a lot of heartburn happening, you're probably not digesting. A lot of the things are burning too much, and by the time it gets to the small intestine, it is still very acidic. And this is where ulcers come from. Ulcers is one of the things that's been listed as well. Ulcers is a classic case of underperforming digestive organs, that are weaker digestive organs, so it cannot produce the bile and the bicarb to actually bring this very acidic chyme down to an alkaline substance so that digestion can happen. So if this happens, if you've got a lot of heartburn, or you use wrong food combinations, we'll get to this a little bit later, where the digestion of a certain type of food simply won't take place because the digestion of the complex structured food, the enzymes are nullifying the alkaline enzymes, So there's a lot of reasons why digestion wouldn't happen properly. And again, it brings us down to this congestion. So if the pancreas, for instance, are so congested, so that the pancreas have cells, And inside the pancreas, in between the cells, there's this fluid existing of blood and lymph. So if this fluid is very sticky and acidic and congested, the cells of the pancreas is becoming weaker and weaker and becomes inhibited of performing well. And this is where diabetes 1 come in. If the islets of Langerhans are becoming so weak that they simply can't produce the insulin you need for the utilization of glucose, the insulin is not being produced. Or in diabetes 2 side, they tell you that you're insulin resistant. And this is because you are so congested interstitially that the sugars literally cannot reach the cells. So the body goes like, oh, there's too much sugar in my blood. And the pituitary gland tells the pancreas to produce more of more insulin. More insulin is produced, but still the sugar are actually not getting to the cells. They are so surrounded by this acidic snot that the food can't actually reach the cell, and that's why you will experience high blood pressure. Now, diabetes 2 also has a lot to do with the adrenals, but we'll talk about that when we get there. So that's fatigue. Heart attack could be either weak heart, it could be weak nerve in the heart, it could be a very weak parathyroid gland, because the parathyroid gland produces enough of the parathyroid hormone that helps the body to utilize calcium. So this is another mineral, extremely important mineral that the body cells need to be able to utilize, and this is calcium. So when we don't have enough parathyroid hormone, our body can actually not utilize the calcium that is in the system. And then you get weaker tissues, because all cells need calcium to build itself and to keep itself strong. So you get weaker tissues, and this is many times why people have experienced heart attacks, because the heart, being a pump, being one of the organs that work physically the hardest, the wear and tear is the hardest on it. If there's not enough calcium intake on the cells of the heart, then the cells becomes weak. So many times people are actually not sitting with a genetic weak heart condition. They're sitting with genetically weak parathyroid, and then they experience things like heart attacks. So all boils down again to this lymphatic fluid that's in between our cells that needs to be alkalized and hydrated so that it can leave our body successfully, carrying all the waste and the heavy metals and the parasites with it, and then render our cells available to receive nutrients and start regenerating themselves. This is how you build a strong body. You get rid of the gunk and you bring in the good stuff. Gum bleeding and receding gums. So remember, your GI tract starts at your lips and ends at your rectum. So all of this is your GI tract. So if you're sitting with bleeding gums, it's not a gum problem, it's a GI tract problem. It means your whole GI tract is acidic and worn out and weak and needs to be healed by alkalizing and hydrating and allowing it to regenerate itself. So what happens a lot of times is people that goes on the fruit detox would experience these receding gum situation. And the reason for this is that you're losing the acids that was in between the cells of your GI tract. So the GI tract goes through a shrinking in a way because it's losing so much of these acids, and this is where the receding effect comes in. Some people experience even their teeth going loose, and we always tell them, don't pull the teeth, just be patient. It's a question of a couple of weeks, a few weeks, that the GI tract will go through the shrinking effect, and then will start rebuilding itself and become strong and alkaline and resilient and build itself up again. Spot baldness, any kind of baldness has to do with acidity. So if you experience any kind of baldness or losing of hair, loss of hair, in that spot, you're probably sitting with a lot of acid. So look at this, the root canal of the hair being like the roots of a plant that needs to go into healthy soil to grow. If the soil is not healthy, in the human case, if the soil is very acidic, the hair will stop growing. So there's another thing that influences growth of everything, which is your pituitary gland. So there's another thing that your pituitary gland could be really congested and in a damaged situation and not producing enough of the growth hormones that you need for your hair to grow, or anything else to grow for that matter. So that is another thing that's connected with baldness. Arthritis, of course, is when the general arthritis out there is when the cartilages becomes worn out. So what happens when anything is worn out? What makes things being worn out? Again, it brings us to acidity. Acidity is the thing that burns and corrodes. And then there's a second element to consider here. There's a few different ways our bodies have learned to combat this acidity, to keep you alive from this acidity. Some bodies would make tumors, which I think is quite a clever body, because now it creates a waste bag with all the acids in the inside and actually prevents damage going to the surrounding tissue. When there's tumors in a situation where it now affects heartbeat or breathing or brain function or whatever, now the tumor becomes a problem. Most of our protection mechanisms eventually becomes a problem, because the body can only protect itself for so long against this corrosive acidity that we create through our diet, which is crazy to think how easy it is to fix through our diet by actually switching to alkaline ash forming food like fruits and instigating your first proper detoxification. So tumors are one of the things. Another way that the body protects the tissue from the acids is plaquing. So it will either produce more lipid-based things like cholesterol, and in this case, the cholesterol is used as protection, which is when they refer to healthy cholesterol, right? So yes, it is healthy for the body to produce the cholesterol to save it from the acids, but it's a secondary intervention that wouldn't be necessary if you're not acidic on the inside. Then the extra production of the cholesterol won't be necessary, because what happens with the plaquing again? The plaquing itself become a problem. The plaquing itself, now there's so much plaquing that it starts constricting the pathways and the pressures now start building. So at an older age, people with low blood pressure their whole life would start switching to high blood pressure, because the low blood pressure shows you that your adrenals are very low. And one of the things that adrenals produce is steroids. And the steroids are usually the way the body would deal with acids. But now there's so much acids, there's not enough steroids, and this plaquing happens. And then this low blood pressure are plaqued in such a way that the pressure in your body is built up and it swings over to high blood pressure. There are quite a few people that sitting with, especially older people, that's sitting with high blood pressure. And then as soon as they go on the fruit detox, it swings right back to low blood pressure, which shows them the true genetic level of their adrenals. And then they start healing it from that side. Okay, so another way the body protects itself is by leaching calcium. This is actually where I want to get to with the arthritis. It leaches calcium from the body matrix. This is a big deal, especially if you're now sitting with a lower functioning parathyroid, which, if you've come from a family that had a lot of dairy, this is one of the first things that are suffering is the thyroid and parathyroid. So many of us, if not most of us, are sitting with a congested parathyroid slash thyroid that has gotten weaker as well as the congestion persisted and continues burning and corrosing the cells of our thyroid and parathyroid and everything else that's there. The esophagus, the vocal cords, the trachea, everything else that's there are being damaged as well. And then touching on having tonsils removed. This is the first group actually that I had no one listing having tonsils removed, which is something to celebrate, really. Usually, I would say more than 50% of the group's tonsils have been removed. So people whose tonsils is removed has even weaker spaces around here, because now the acids are falling down instead of going neatly into the channels of the lymphatic system. So when your body leaches calcium, it leaches calcium from all tissue, your connective tissue, your bones, your arteries, your cells, it's leaching calcium from everywhere. And this is literally weakening the body. And then this is why cartilages would literally disappear. They call it wear and tear over time. But if humans, the cell of a human body regenerates naturally, this is their natural characteristic, is to regenerate themselves. There won't be any wear and tear if the body can keep on regenerating itself successfully. So Bringing us back to the 4 processes, I spoke about digestion, right? The next one is absorption, the next one is utilization, and then elimination. So if we want to deliver nutrients to the cell so that the cell can actually regenerate itself, we need to have a healthy digestive process. We need to first eat healthy food, right? Then we need to have a healthy digestive process. We need to have a healthy GI tract that includes your small intestine, so that absorption can happen. Connected with absorption is that thing that I mentioned about if you are so congested in between the cells, there's also no absorption happening. There's the food, the nutrients can literally not reach the cell. That's another level of absorption, right? Then there's utilization that we touched on right in the beginning of this video, where we explained that the parathyroid hormone has to produce parathyroid hormone to utilize calcium. And the adrenals produce enzymes for the utilization of up to 52 minerals. So if you start sitting with weakened adrenals and parathyroid, this utilization is also not happening. So these 3 steps are necessary just to get food successfully to the cell. And they can't happen if elimination is not working. Most of the people I meet and helping them and coach them to heal on this way, their kidneys are not filtering. I've only met 5 of the hundreds I've helped whose kidneys was filtering and I met them, or whose kidneys was filtering at some stage when I met them. This is a modern human condition. We're sitting with kidneys that are not filtering. Why are they not filtering? Because the cells that make up the kidney is surrounded by a sticky, acidic, lymphatic congestion. And because of that, the cells itself is being burned and worn out and is inhibited from producing and doing what it's supposed to be doing. And the main culprit behind this is protein. This is a topic for another conversation. Bone degeneration, weak bones. There's quite a few people that's mentioned they've broken ankles or they've broken bones or they have bone degeneration or weak bones. So this ties onto this calcium plaquing. The body would actually utilize calcium, leach it from the body matrix, which renders your bone weak, and porous in a way. And this then constitutes weak bones. So how do you fix this? You make sure that your elimination process is working so you can get rid of all the gunk so that nutrients can reach the body so that that bone can restart rebuilding itself. You fix your parathyroid so that, but the same way, by decongesting the lymphatic fluid, getting nutrients to the parathyroid so that the parathyroid produce enough calcium again so that it can start building healthy bones again. Old injuries and operations. So many times what happened with let's talk about injuries first. Injuries happens, bone is broken or ligament is tore, whatever, and it heals, but because you're in an acidic situation, it heals to a point, and there's usually quite a lot of scar tissue there. And the same with operations. Usually operations only happen if there's a problem, and these problems are always rooted in acidosis, right, in a congested lymphatic fluid. So this operation usually happens in a very acidic space, and then it heals in this acidic space as well. So again, it heals to a point. There's usually quite a lot of scar tissue that's still there, and this is very acidic. So when you go into the world of fruit detoxification, you will actually have flare-ups, they would call it, the medicine guys would call it, flare-ups of your old injuries. And this is not really flare-ups, this is healing of your old injuries and operations. This is actually acids that were so stuck there in the scar tissue or whatever, and as it starts dissolving, it is acids that's on the move, and acids burn. If you keep Coca-Cola in your mouth and you just keep it there, it burns, and this is what acid does. If you can, someone that takes chemo, go to your oncologist and ask them if you can have a cup of the chemo, and ask them if you can throw it into their face and see what their response will be, because they know, like battery acids, this chemistry really burns because it's highly acidic. Headache, a lot of things can happen with headache. Many times, because there's this feedback loop between the transverse colon and the pituitary gland, this is kind of the two brains talking to each other. This is the feedback loop between the two brains. When you're sitting with a lot of congestion in your colon, including your transverse colon, this toxins that's in the wall that forms because of this congestion feedbacks to the pituitary. So a lot of the headaches can be relation in that. Plaquing in the head that happens, because the head space is a very important space for the body. So if there's a lot of acids there, it's either going to grow tumors, or it's actually going to do a lot of plaquing, where Parkinson's and MS comes in. So there would be a lot of either lipid plaquing or calcium plaquing happening to protect the tissue from all the acids. And that pressure, because of the plaquing, can create the headaches again as well. If you're sitting with a very weak prostate, this is directly related to protein usage. The same with really weak adrenals and bladder conditions. So because the kidneys are the biggest elimination organs of this lymphatic fluid, almost 80% of the lymphatic fluid leaves the body via the kidneys. So the body knows to send wastes to the kidneys, right? So this bottom pelvic area, the lower abdomen area, the bottom pelvic area, actually closer to it, receives all this lymphatic fluid carrying all the wastes of the body. And then many times it reaches the kidneys, and instead of leaving the body via the kidneys, via the bladder successfully, it cannot, because the kidneys are not functioning as it should. So now it starts packing up in that area. So when you're sitting with a really weak prostate or weak bladder, or incontinence, or you've got rectum anal situations, weak rectum and anus, then you know that this is the culmination of the fact that your kidneys are not filtering. And how easy is it to fix it? It's literally going on a fruit detox and allowing this acids to leave the body. Unfortunately, if people sits with an extremely weak pelvic area and the organs that's in there, lower abdomen, pelvic, like the prostate and that, there's no time for the body to work on these acids to bring it to a pH of 6. Ideally, this is what the body does. The acids will be, the lymphatic fluid will go through different lymph nodes throughout the body en route to the kidneys. And inside these lymph nodes, there's macrophages, which is another word for bacteria. And the bacteria deals with this waste and actually takes the pH from as low as 2.5 to a pH of 6. So that by the time it reaches the kidneys, it's a pH of 6 that reaches the kidneys, which the kidneys can deal with easily and then release it well. Unfortunately, if you're sitting in a bad progressed state of prostate health or bladder health, it's very acidic and it's so close to the kidneys. So now the acids hit your kidneys and that burns. So you're going to go through this period where a doctor would have told you you've got urinary tract infection or bladder infection, and they would want to give you either antibiotics and antiparasitics and stuff to deal with it. So in our case, what we do is we help the person to deal with the pain. So we've got pain relief herbs, we use castor oil packs, we continue making use of the herbs to support the bladder, the kidneys, and all the lymphatic fluid and all of that. And we make use of microparasites, detoxing herbs as well to deal with that situation. So this is quite one of the two tough roads for people to take. There's two groups that have a tough time healing. One of them are the guys that are really sitting with a lot of acids in their lower abdomen and pelvic area and weak organs because of this. The weak organs are the sign of the acids in a way, right? And for these guys, they need to be brave to see themselves through their healing and get to the place where it doesn't hurt anymore. Candida, so any kind of parasite infestation is a secondary situation to lymphatic congestion. If I'm healthy and my lymphatic fluid is flowy, it is not congested at all, it leaves my body successfully via the kidneys and that. If I ingest any kind of parasite, it literally will leave my body in 24 to 48 hours. There's no place for it to get stuck and to proliferate or to find food. Most of the parasites live off putrefaction, which is dead cells, which is dead things, and many times it's dead cells. So that's why you'll have bacteria arrive at a bladder infection, not because the bacteria gives you the bladder infection, because your bladder is degenerating to such a degree that there's so many dead cells that the bacteria arrive to deal with the dead cells. So now if you attack the bacteria, you're not solving the problem at all. You're actually just making it worse, because now the rate of the dead cells is not, of the dying cells are not changing, because you haven't done anything else, right? So it's just a question of time before the bacteria will proliferate again, hopefully to help you deal with the dead cells. Otherwise, you're sitting with other complications. And Candida specifically deals with fermentation. So our body doesn't have any way to deal with fermentation. If you look at nature, if you give an animal a chance to choose between fermented food and fresh food, there's no way they're going to choose the fermented food above the fresh food. The reason we brought in fermentation is because we went into a stage of lack. There wasn't enough food going around, so we had to preserve foods for the time when there is no food, especially as we move north, as humanity moved north into the colder regions. So it's very just that people became clever enough to ferment the food and be able to keep themselves food for the winter months when there is no fresh food. But if you're sitting in a modern day and age where you have access to fresh food, you do not need fermented food. The only time you need to go into the world of probiotics and fermentation is if you've done so much chemical washing in the inside of your body that you've killed your microorganisms and you want to replenish them. Then you'll introduce fermented foods and probiotics for a while to see how much of your microbiome you can restore. Chemical washing will include your MMS, your CDS, your hydrochloric acids, your bicarb and borax, any kind of thing that would have cleaned a toilet or cleaned water or whatever. If you add that to your body, there's no intelligence for it to not kill the good ones as well. So you're going to sit with a huge repercussion after that. And it's not something that happens, it's not a short-term result. The chemical washing, you're going to have it for a while before you start seeing other problems develop in your body. You're literally killing the macrophages in your lymph nodes. You're killing the micro elements in your gut, and it's not just in your gut. It's in between your cells, everywhere. There's microorganisms right through your body that has different functions. You do not want to use a chemical washing agent to get rid of it. It's like using chemo to get rid of cancer. It's not the way we're supposed to do this. We don't kill everything so that we kill the bad guys, We rather fix the reason why the bad guys are there. So if you eat a lot of bad food combining foods as well, so if you eat your fruits, for instance, with other kinds of foods, the fruits will end up fermenting instead of digesting. So there's another level of fermentation that's created, and the fungi literally deals with fermentation. There's nothing else in the body that can deal with fermentation. So when people want to come to me for a microparasite cleanse, I usually ask them if they eat kind of fermentation and what kind of food combinations they do, because if they're not going to stop that, then rather deal with the candida, because the candida is there to help you, Candida also usually appears after chemical washing. So after you've been douching with a lot of chemical things and that's usually when the candida appears, because there's dead cells, there's putrefaction, there's fermentation, and now the candida proliferates. So any kind of parasitic infestation or overgrowth is a secondary condition. And how do you fix it? You clean out your body by hydrating and alkalizing the lymphatic fluid, getting it to flow again so that the kidneys start filtering again, so that it leaves your body successfully, and you start feeding your cells instead of the candida. So you make sure that you do the right food combinations, you don't eat fermentation, you don't rely too much on yeast foods like breads and cheese and beers and all of that. This is all foods that feeds the fungi. Nutritional yeast, no, not good. It feeds the fungi. Sinus, completely lymphatic. It's basically lymphatic in your headspace, so it's connected to headspace as well. Why is the lymph in your headspace? It is sort of buffering the acids, right? So the more lymph there are, the more acids there are. So the more plaquing there is, the more acids there are, the more plaquing there is, and that is constrictive. That is actually creating blockages and then create this sinus effect. Anemic. To be anemic, again, has to do with digestion, absorption, utilization. So you might not be digesting it well enough to bring in the iron or whatever you are anemic from. You might not be absorbing it well enough. And even if you are absorbing it, the adrenals might not be producing enough of the enzyme necessary to utilize iron. So these are the reasons that you will find yourself being anemic. So if you've got low blood pressure, being anemic is one of the things that shows, because low blood pressure shows that your adrenals are low. I've spoken about diabetes, how it is about the islets of Langerhans of the pancreas that is not functioning well anymore because it's surrounded by this lymphatic fluid that is constricting it from functioning. There's another element that can play a role. Sometimes you get a nerve-related diabetic one, which means the nerve components of the islets of Langerhans are not functioning well anymore. Why? Because they are being burned by acids and being weakened. And then the nerve brings movement to all cells. So the cells and the stuff is like the hardware, and the nerve is like the software, bringing action and change to the cells. Acne, there's a few skin conditions. Psoriasis is one of the others that came up. So psoriasis is flaking of the skin. It's basically the skin dying, right? It's flaking of the skin. The skin is drying out and flaking off. So this is because there's not nutrition getting to those cells of the skin, and it's literally starting to show the degeneration of your biggest organ, which is the skin. So that's why you get liver psoriasis as well. It's very tightly connected, the liver and the skin. It's almost like the skin is the mirror to the liver and vice versa, you know? So that's what psoriasis is. But if you sit with the kind of acne, a kind of situation like a rash or acne that it's got look like a pimple, that that is lymph. That white that you see in a pimple or in a boil, that is lymph. So when you're sitting with that kind of thing, you're actually sitting with a very strong eliminative organ, which is your skin. And instead of just letting go of sweat, which contains a lot of gases and some other substances, your skin is so strong, it's actually pushing clumps of lymph through the skin membrane. Many people see this as a disease, but actually this is overcompensation of your skin because your kidneys are not functioning very well. Your kidneys are not getting rid of the lymph and your skin is overcompensating for it. So this is actually keeping you alive. By putting things on now that is suppressing this back into the body is the last thing you should do. What you should rather do is open that elimination channel via the kidneys so that the skin doesn't have to overcompensate anymore. Gastric bypass is a very sad situation. Quite a few people has gone that route. This is the way you absorb nutrients. So your body might be intelligent enough to try to overcompensate for this. I know some nutrients are absorbed via the bowel wall, and this is where fruits can really play a big role for you. Maybe is when you eat fruits, it is absorbed via much of the fructose can be absorbed via the bowel wall. So I would keep it to really simple food types that can be digested quite fast while still in the bowel. I will have very small portions and right throughout the day instead of big bowls of food. Big bowls of food is complete waste of time because you have no intestines to receive it. So yeah, I would definitely stay away from any acid ash forming food. I would go on a kind of foraging fruit diet for the rest of my life, trying to absorb as much of the nutrients while it's in the bowel instead of relying on the intestines to absorb it. Cancer, we have to talk about cancer. Cancer is a name given to an acidic cell. So when your cell becomes so weak and it's been surrounded by this lymph and blood that the lymph has become so acidic that the acids literally permeates the membrane of the cell, and the inside of the cell now becomes acidic. So this is what a cancer cell is. And when a cell becomes that weak, it proliferate more, because this is what happens in nature. Even parasites, if they start dying, they lay eggs and they become more. They break segments off of themselves for survival. So your body is actually trying to survive by producing more of this, multiplying more of these cells to try to survive, So this is why they many times say the cancer is spreading, which is not the case, It's your cells that's dying. So what do you do with cells that's dying? You clean them up and you feed them well. And your body will either regenerate these cells or it will help it out. It will actually expel it and replace it, because that's how incredible our bodies are. It's actually very easy to heal cancer. My mentor, Dr. Robert Moores, are healing cancer patients in their thousands monthly. So if you can stay away from the extremely acidic treatments that's out there called chemo and radiation, and you go into the world of alkalinity and regeneration, you can get rid of your cancer within a month or two, a few months. You can actually start getting rid of it. Okay, let's step over to adrenals. So there's quite a few things that you know, that you can know is directly related to adrenals, to weak adrenals especially. So low blood pressure. Most of our life had low blood pressure. If you go into hospital now and you check the blood pressure of the children there, your mouth will fall open. And for some other reason, they think the blood pressure of children must look different than adults. No, it's just our new generation are so weak because the previous generations has been living on high protein, high sugar, high fat, high processed diets and high dairy diets, and they didn't know how to fix themselves, and they procreated in that state. And we're sitting with babies born with cancer. We're sitting with a very weak generation at the moment that's very young, and they don't know how to fix themselves. And the biggest answer is support their adrenals. That's the biggest answer. Get them to detox, and while you're doing that, support their adrenals, support their adrenals, support their adrenals. So low blood pressure, adrenals are the ones that produce neurotransmitters. Dopamine, adrenaline, just to name a few. So this is when the body wants, the heartbeat is determined by the neurotransmitters reaching the heart. That's literally, if you want to take it as simple as that. The neurotransmitters are the electricity of the nervous system. You got the hardware of the nervous system, which is the brain and the spine and the nerve cells and that kind of thing. And then you've got the neurotransmitters that's playing on this hardware and making things happen. So if you're sitting with low adrenal function, you don't have enough of this neurotransmitters since birth, and you're building up this deficit of neurotransmitters, and your heartbeat are getting lower and lower and lower. Blood pressure is lower and lower and lower because of this. And then because one of the other things your adrenals are producing is steroids, which are not produced enough now, your body starts plaquing. And this then makes it swing to high blood pressure, like I mentioned earlier. So anxiety, first and foremost, adrenals. The adrenals is is because of this neurotransmitter effect, it equals to how you are able to respond to the world. And when you are not able to respond to the world effectively, that's when your anxiety starts building, right? So it's very much tied to our emotions as well, the adrenals, because of this neurotransmitter element of it. How our nervous system respond is creating our personality. If I'm a jittery personality, it is my nervous system that's jittery. If I'm a calm personality, I'm either calm because I'm healthy, or I'm unresponsive because I don't have life. I don't have the ability to respond. So this is all nerve related. So anxiety is big in this group. I think it's the biggest thing, the thing that's been mentioned. No, the thing that was mentioned most by everyone, unfortunately, in this group is having had the COVID jab. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But anxiety would be second. Anemia is on adrenals. Malnutrition of many nutrients would be lying with the adrenals. Your asthma is adrenal focus. You can have asthma because of having really weak lungs. I don't want to dismiss this. This is a lymphatic condition. This is lymph in the lungs that is congested, that's preventing the lungs from taking in enough oxygen and releasing enough carbon dioxide, and that is related as asthma sometimes. But then there's the autoimmune nervous system, which is the diaphragm that's actually pulling and allowing the breathing to happen. So if this is weak, because of the neurotransmitters not being enough to make it happen, you also have asthma, and you can't actually, your lungs simply cannot expand enough to bring in enough air. So we usually treat that situation with antispasmodics. So you immediately have to get off your inhalers. The inhalers are really just bringing more damage to the lungs. So get off the inhalers, replace it with antispasmodic tinctures, and then start your journey on fruits and get healed so that that nervous system can get healed and the asthma can go away. Estrogen dominance has a lot to do with the adrenals, but also the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is our master computer. The endocrine system, the glands that makes up the endocrine system, is the operating system of the body. So the adrenals operates the kidneys, the thyroid operates the skin, the thymus operate the immune responses, the spleen operate the blood, the pituitary operate the hypothalamus, the pineal operates our vision and our dream space, so this is our operating system, and the pituitary gland is the master computer of the operating system. So the pituitary gland receives the feedback from the rest of the body and respond with hormones to communicate with the other glands and instigate them to respond with hormones to serve the rest of the body. So any kind of hormonal imbalance would be related to a certain gland and then always related to the pituitary gland. So estrogen is a big combination between pituitary gland and adrenals. Either one of the two are really weak, and there's this imbalance in estrogen happening. We're going to speak a little bit about menopause. Hormonal balancing has been mentioned in this group quite heavily. So maybe we should speak about that now. Menopause is aging. I don't believe in aging. I believe in weakening. There's a woman that had a baby on the age of 80-something. I don't know if that is what women would want, but she had it. And she lived on raw food exclusively, So we are not aging, we are weakening. And weakening of the thyroid, the adrenals, the pituitary gland, the ovaries, all of these add up to menopause. So it's systemic weakening, and it shows in women just simply because we have this extra element of monthly menstrual cycles, and it's a very tangible way of seeing the differences happening in the body. I had so many women join the detox that reported almost immediate changes in their menopausal symptoms. The immediate bettership, it starts on day 2, and by the second month they cannot believe that they thought they were in menopause before, So this is something that is really need to be considered by the woman, to not accept it, but to heal yourself and to get through it in a painless way, you don't have to deal with all this pain and symptoms as your body age, just because you think it's normal to age. Burnout is absolutely classic. Adrenal burnout, they call it adrenal burnout, and that's when your adrenals are just so low that most of the functions that is nerve related and the usage of oxygen, the utilization of sugars, all of that is now influenced because the steroids produced by the adrenals are actually the metabolizing aspect of sugars, of the fuel of your body, the good sugars, So that would also then suffer from that. Dizzy spells has to do with your headspace, especially the backside, cerebellum, medulla. Where your dizziness center is, an equilibrium center is. If it is really congested in the back here, then you might experience some dizziness. Vertigo as well has to do with your ear, of course, which again is in the head space. So this space is congested and being worn out, and there's imbalances happening where you experience vertigo. And this relates back to the adrenals again. When you have really low adrenals, there's so little neurotransmitters that you might experience the dizziness factor as well. Blackout has a lot to do with your adrenals or your headspace, nerve related. And the one organ / gland that's related to the nervous system, except for whatever happens in your head and your spine, is your adrenals because of the production of neurotransmitters. So if you experience the blackouts, you might sit with extremely low blood pressure. That you can sort out by healing the adrenals. Okay. Thyroid. The biggest two things that plays a role with thyroid is depression and hemorrhoids. If you have depression, hemorrhoids, and varicose veins, you must know that your parathyroid is stuffed. And you need to make sure that to replenish this parathyroid so that your body can start utilizing calcium. So the reason depression is connected to it is I am the host of 100 trillion cells, and if each cell does not have enough calcium, they become depressed, literally physically depressed. And this is the depression that manifests through me as host, that I manifest in different ways, that every individual manifests in different ways. So that's why depression is directly related. The physiological reason of depression is directly related to depressed cells because of lack of calcium. There are other reasons that people can mentally or emotionally become depressed, of course, as well. This is not dismissed. Hemorrhoids is when parts of your GI tract doesn't have enough calcium. So the connective tissue, the tissue is weak and it starts bulging and ballooning. And this is where hemorrhoids come from. Varicose veins, the same. This is when the calcium in your veins are not enough and they actually start showing the blood that goes through them, So these are very clear signs of parathyroid that is weak. We did speak about the heart attack thing. Weight gain, thyroid, adrenal, and lymphatic. Of course, it is. The congestion of the lymph becomes more and more and more. In some people's cases, the lymph stays in the first level of congestion, which is white. You can see it in their eyes, but it becomes so thick white that this actually contributes to them being fat because there's so much of it. Then in other people, the congestion, instead of staying on the white level and becoming really thick, it goes into the yellow, which means it is dehydrated more. So you can have really skinny people with a completely dehydrated inner environment, and they're not fat at all. Adrenals plays a role with weight gain if the sugar metabolism is not happening as it should, and now the sugar is actually converted to fat by the liver because it wasn't metabolized well. That's a contribution to fat in that case. Thyroid plays a role with weight gain because of the temperature regulation again. So certain enzyme functions can't happen if you're too hot or too cold. You need that ultimate 36.6 degrees, 36.8 degrees. If your basal temperature is lower than that, you're sitting with a hypothyroid. If it's higher than that, you're sitting with a hyperthyroid. And although having a hyperthyroid is easier to deal with than sitting with a hypothyroid, anything in imbalance is going to break. So you don't want to stay in that space. You want to get to the place where you actually bring it in a balanced position. Hot flushes, of course, has to do with the thyroid that's weakening, usually connected with menopause as well. But as we replenish this thyroid, that symptomology goes away. Okay, wrapping it up a little bit, let's look at the neuro conditions. The biggest one, and I put it there, is the COVID jab. My understanding of the technology that was used with the COVID jab is just how it worsens existing conditions in the human body, and it seems to be directly nerve related. So everything in the body has to do with the nervous system, right? There's not one cell in the body that doesn't have a nervous component or nerve component to it, some more than others. So it seems to be that whatever they've been using, the heavy metals they used in it and the microorganisms they used in it, all has to do with bringing in more of the electromagnetic frequencies that is not conducive for biological life. And this really influenced whatever condition you're sitting with is just being worsened. So it's quite a big thing. It's quite a big thing if you said yes to this technology. You are quite a warrior to have said yes to it. You might die because of it, or you might experience a whole different life experience because of it. What I've learned though over time is the intelligence of this body is extreme. It is mind-blowing. So if we are able to naturalize this body, and this means we bring it to its natural position where all the four symptoms are working: digestion, absorption, utilization, elimination, it's all working. Your body is not accumulating anything. It's actually releasing whatever is not you. I have a firm belief that anything that's not you, even higher technology that they try to bring in here, will eventually leave the body, even if it's DNA and RNA related. It will actually reset itself. It seems to be there's this blueprint of the human body in the ether. And when we start working on our health, we restore our human body to this blueprint, because we are not in a physical world, right? We are being physical in a spiritual world. So everything is spiritual. And this is, I think, the biggest weapon for people that have said yes to this technology, to realize that you're more spiritual than physical. And you can deal with this. You can actually facilitate your own healing, making sure your elimination channels are open so that the body can leave. Get rid of microorganisms that's not supposed to be there. Go through your parasite cleansing process. Get rid of the heavy metals. There seems to be a very important relationship between heavy metals and microorganisms that needs to be in place for this COVID jab thing to work. That's why they've put so many extra heavy metals in the jab as well. So let's talk about parasite cleansing and heavy metal cleansing quickly. This is now part of the integration chat. I want to start touching on the integration. So you've done this 28-day detox now. However, whatever level you committed to, however committed you were during the 28 days, you've now been introduced to this method of healing. So what do you do going forward? Immediate future for all of us is Christmas and festive time. So there might be a little bit of a break waiting for most of us, just being with our people without overthinking things too much. But then there's a new year that's lying ahead of us, and many of us want to heal this new year. So you either have a choice to dive in with the fruit thing and really push it for as long as you can, to heal as much as you can, especially before winter sets in. This is a radical path. I'd suggest everyone that has the ability to do this and to actually heal as much as you can while you've got the energy and the ability to do so. In this case, I would strongly suggest you consider the full parasite cleanse. So many of you have done the tinctures now, which is a good introductory parasite cleanse. You need to get to the place where you do a macro parasite cleanse. This is a capsule-based one. You do the macro parasite cleanse for a month. You rest for a month, and then you repeat a month treatment again. This is to catch the second generation of eggs or segments that was broken off the bigger parasites. This is crucial for everyone. And then depending on your lifestyle, you need to do it maybe every 6 months if you live with a lot of animals and a lot of other people, or maybe every 3 years if you're in a more non-parasitic environment. Microparasite cleansing need to happen, especially if you're on this fruit detox, because now you're going to get rid of a lot of dead cells, a lot of fermentation, a lot of putrefaction, which was the food for the microorganisms. So they're going to become hungry and start starving. And nature does funny things when it starts starving. So you might experience a lot of cravings that is not really yours. You might experience pains and niggles because they're starving. They want to survive. So by using herbs to help our body get rid of this overload of microorganisms, because we've changed our diet, because we've changed our lifestyle, there is not enough food available for them. So we do use the microparasite detox. So my suggestion would be to do the macroparasite detox, which is the capsule base, for 30 days. Do a 30-day microparasite detox, which is tincture base. Repeat the macroparasite detox, which is capsule base, and then go into another month to 5 months of microparasite detox treatment, depending on your state. And between myself and you, we'll be able to determine where you are at with your microorganisms. So that is in the sense of parasite detox. And then heavy metal detox, we don't even look at a heavy metal detox until the kidneys are filtering sufficiently. So when the kidneys are filtering sufficiently, we know the elimination channels is open. Now we can start playing around by pulling more on the lymphatic fluid so that more of it leaves our body, carrying the heavy metals, and then also giving it a helping hand with using chelating herbs that is now actually combining to this heavy metals. And it only needs to combine quick to pull it from where it was settled, because the moment it's in this lymphatic fluid, it is going to flow to the outside, and then we break this cycle that was created between heavy metals and microorganisms. That's clearly a very important thing to have for the technology to work at the moment, via being the COVID jab or the EMFs or whatever is out there. Okay, so that's a big one. Parkinson's, to touch on Parkinson's, the reason you sit with Parkinson's is plaquing in the headspace. So this means there's a lot of acids in the headspace, and the body is using this lipids to plaque it, and the plaquing, the protection itself becomes the problem, becomes the obstruction, and this then renders you with Parkinson's. So this is a difficult one to work back from. Deep respect for everyone that is fighting this fight, but basically you want to get those adrenals to function well, so that the kidneys can filter, so that the lymph can start leaving your body. You want to keep on alkalizing and hydrating so that this can come loose and eventually leave your body successfully. There's people that propagate that protein diets would actually help with Parkinson's. When you go into the world of protein diets, you're dehydrating the lymphatic fluid. This is what acids does. You cannot take in acids and pretend it's not going to influence your inner environment. So the lymphatic fluid dehydrates, so it shrinks in a way. So it gives people the idea that they are healthier now because there's more space, the pressure is less because everything has dried down and shrunk in the inside. But this sort of solidifies the plaquing. It is no way that you can heal. You will experience a short-term bettership because all of a sudden there's less of this lymphatic fluid because it's thicker and it's more congested and it's more dehydrated. And then you're going to go into the space where organs and glands actually break down, and you're going to find yourself in much more serious conditions. They must say you never die of Parkinson's, you die with Parkinson's. And many times it's the treatments of Parkinson's that make people die earlier than they would have even. Okay, I think that was good. Insomnia was one that was mentioned once or twice. This has to do with the pineal gland, which is also in your headspace. So if your headspace is congested, the chance of your pineal gland being congested is very good. It's not just fluoride that calcifies the pineal gland. There's congestion actually also influence the pineal gland and inhibits it from working well, and it usually is connected to the pituitary gland as well. So they're again looking at decongesting. Any kind of neuralgia is extremely painful. It's really bad that people sit with that, and that is the direct nerve condition. That is nerve cells that are weakened and that are weak and that needs healing. And the moment you actually eliminate all the accumulated wastes and congestion, and you are able to deliver nutrients successfully to your cells, these nerve cells will also regenerate themselves and they will not be inflamed anymore, which creates the pain in the nerve cells. Integrating going forward, just to quickly touch on it, you either go full on the fruit thing. What if you're not ready to go full on the fruit thing? What can you do in the meantime to put yourself on a trajectory where you actually are healing slowly? So you cut out all proteins as much as you can, or you only include proteins 20% of the time. And when you do include them, you make sure you eat them by themselves. So your food combinations here is hugely important. So instead of having a lot of veggies with rice being a protein, veggies being plant material, drop the veggies, have rice with another protein like lentils or mushrooms, so make a lentil curry with rice. That's a much better combined meal than having vegetables with rice or having vegetables with lentils. Instead of having your meat with your salad, have your salad and 40 minutes later have your meat. So be clever with how you combine your food. Eat as much fruits as you can. See if you can replace 1 or 2 meals a day with fruits only. Don't eat any other food with the fruits. Don't eat melons with other fruits. So this is a big one of food combining. I'll bring out a food combining video shortly as well. There's been a few requests for that, so I'll go into more detail then. But this then puts you on a trajectory of eating. If you can keep your diet 80% carbs, 20% protein, and of this keep it 80% raw, 20% cooked. If you can use this 80-20 thing, of the raw, 80% fruits, 20% veggies, if you can sort of start playing around getting to that kind of combination of food and ratio of food, then you put yourself on a slow trajectory of healing, and you're limiting the damage you're bringing to you. You're actually now going into the world of healing, and then start relying on herbs more so than on isolated supplementation. Don't use magnesium and calcium and ascorbic acid and all these weird isolated things that men has created. rather stick to what God has created, whole foods. So supplement with beetroot and herbs, and this is a whole food supplementation. It is way superior than isolated chemistry. So this is how you can integrate what you've learned as well going forward. I'm going to call it at that. Well done for everyone that's completed the detox. It was so lovely having you being part of my 2023 experience. I'm so excited to have many of you continue with me in 2024. It's going to be a big year, 2024. I've got a feeling in my guts that we're going to see many people being introduced to this way of healing and actually go for it and heal themselves and heal their loved ones. And let's get to our children. I'm going to do a video on prospective parents. If you haven't had children yet and you still want to have children, I would strongly suggest you listen to this video and learn how to prepare yourself to grow healthy children. And then if you have had children, or if you've got your children already, part of that video would be, now you've got your children, now how do you help them to heal? And maybe you're pregnant already, what can you do to heal? So I'm going to put that into one video as well. And that will be in the near future. Have a wonderful festive time, everyone. Look after yourself. Stay cool for those in the southern hemisphere. Stay warm for those in the northern hemisphere. And yeah, be blessed as always. This is Celine, your detox coach, signing out from a New Than Infinite Wellness.